The billionaire thought she was just a waitress, a quiet woman carrying plates through a Boston restaurant, invisible to men who believed the world bent for them. But the moment he mocked her and asked for her opinion on a $40 billion deal, she said 5 words that froze the entire room. 5 words that would expose a silent conspiracy, unravel a corrupt empire, and force her face to face with the man who destroyed her life. She had spent 3 years hiding in the shadows. Tonight, the shadows stepped aside, and the real Tessa Monroe finally returned. On cold Boston nights, the Sutton room glowed like a cathedral of money. Amber lights polished mahogany crystal glasses that cost more than most people's rent. And somewhere in the middle of that luxurious storm moved a woman no one ever truly saw. Tessa Monroe, 30 years old, white, quiet, and invisible by design. She balanced 4 heavy plates on her left arm with the ease of someone who had learned to make her body disappear. In this place, wealthy men didn't look at waitresses, they looked through them. That suited her until the night a $40 billion deal, a drunken nephew, and one name from her past ripped the mask off the life she'd spent 3 years building. At table 12 sat Graham Caldwell, the billionaire, whose decisions could move global markets before breakfast. Tonight he was celebrating a massive acquisition with his nephew Evan Caldwell and 2 executives who laughed too loudly at every joke. The dining room shimmered around them like a stage. They played the roles of powerful men, and they believed the world belonged to them. Tessa approached with the plates, her steps silent, her head slightly lowered. She kept her breathing steady. Don't be noticed, don't be remembered. Evan, already drunk and bored, looked up with a mocking grin. "Hey, Uncle Graham," he said too loudly. "You always talk about getting opinions from regular people. Why don't you ask her?" He pointed at Tessa like she was part of the decor. The table laughed. Graham leaned back, amused, predatory, like a man who enjoyed hunting, even when he didn't need the meat. "What's your name?" he asked, eyes flicking to her name tag. "Tessa. You bring coffee, clean tables. What's your opinion on a $40 billion deal?" She felt the weight of the plates digging into her arm. Her heart thudded painfully. This was supposed to be another night of keeping her head down, another night of survival. She opened her mouth to give the safe answer. "I'm sorry, sir. I don't know anything about that." But then one of the executives said a name she hadn't heard out loud in 3 years. Nathan Kincaid. The room shrank. The temperature dropped. Her vision tunneled. Nathan Kincaid, the man who had once been her mentor, the man who had stolen her creation, a revolutionary financial algorithm, and used it to commit fraud on a scale few could comprehend. The man who had framed her with surgical precision and watched federal agents tear apart her life. Tessa Monroe, a brilliant analyst once courted by every major firm on the East Coast, disappeared overnight. She changed her name to Tessa Miller, took the only job she could find, and hid in the shadows of Boston. But now Kincaid's name had surfaced at this table, connected to this deal. Something inside her snapped, not in anger, but in awakening. For 3 years she had been small. Tonight she remembered she wasn't. She turned, slowly, carefully, and the laughter around the table died. "You're being set up," she said. Those 5 quiet words landed like a grenade. Graham's smile vanished. Forks froze midair. A glass stopped halfway to someone's lips. "What did you just say?" he asked, voice turning sharp. Tessa set the plates down with deliberate calm. "You think you're buying Nexora Systems for its technology," she said. "But what you're actually buying is their debt." Silence thickened, vibrating with tension. "Nexora looks like a gold mine," she continued, "but the real value has been drained into a shell company called Horizon Apex Holdings. Nathan Kincaid has been working with Nexora's CFO for months." Graham's jaw flexed. "How do you know that name?" "Because I built the system he's using to do it," she said. Evan's mouth dropped open. One of the executives made a strangled noise. Tessa stepped closer. Her voice was steady, strong, in a way that startled even her. "Kincaid's plan is simple. You complete the purchase. 6 weeks later, Horizon Apex declares bankruptcy. The debts fall on you. Nexora becomes worthless. Caldwell Capital collapses under the loss. And while you're on your knees trying to survive, Kincaid launches a takeover bid. Graham Caldwell, one of the sharpest financial predators in America, went still. "How do you know this?" he demanded. Tessa held his gaze. "For 3 years, I've watched him ruin lives, including mine. Tonight I saw the paperwork in your briefcase, and I recognized his fingerprints. A moment of pure electric silence. Then Graham threw a black credit card on the table. Evan, pay the bill. He pointed at the two executives. You're fired. Leave. Now. They scrambled out like frightened animals. Graham turned back to Tessa. You have 10 seconds, he said quietly. My car is outside. If you don't come with me, I'll find out who you are anyway, and this restaurant will be shut down by tomorrow morning. She didn't flinch. She simply untied her apron and placed it on the table. My name is Tessa Monroe, she said. And Nathan Kincaid didn't just compete with me, he destroyed my life. Graham didn't blink. Then let's go fix it. Outside, Boston's wind cut like blades. Graham's black SUV waited at the curb engine running. Tessa climbed inside. The doors locked with a soft mechanical click, a sound that told her she was stepping into a world she thought she'd left behind forever. The ride was silent. Tessa watched the city blur through rain-streaked windows. She felt small in her cheap uniform sitting inside a car that cost more than her entire year's wages. But deep in her chest, something long buried flickered awake. They pulled up to Caldwell Tower, a skyscraper of glass and steel slicing into the night sky. As they entered, security guards looked at her uniform with suspicion, but Graham's expression made them step aside instantly. The elevator rose floor after floor until the doors opened onto a private corridor. Tessa Monroe, Graham said as he led her into his office. You've said enough to shake the ground under my feet, but if I'm going to trust you, I need to know exactly who you are. For the first time in 3 years, she told the truth, and when she finished, Graham said only one sentence. Then we're going to war. The top floor of Caldwell Tower felt nothing like the elegant chaos of the Sutton Room. It was quiet, cold, and overwhelmingly bright, lit by screens displaying financial landscapes that could rise or collapse with a single decision. Tessa stood near the window, still wearing her waitress uniform, while the city stretched beneath her like a glittering lie. She wondered how many people below had ever realized how fragile power really was. Graham closed the office door behind them. His voice was calm, almost too calm. I need proof, Tessa. Not instinct, not fear. Proof. She turned toward him. You'll have it. He studied her for a long moment, trying to decide whether this woman with trembling hands and fire in her voice was a threat or a salvation. Finally, he said, Then follow me. They took a private elevator down to the 78th floor, the beating heart of Caldwell Capital Partners. The doors slid open to reveal a massive data center filled with rows of analysts, screens, and humming servers. Conversations died the moment Graham stepped into the room. Every head lifted, every chair went still. Behind Tessa's shoulder, she heard whispers. Who is she? Why is she with him? Is that a waitress? She kept her eyes forward. She had spent years shrinking herself to avoid attention, but now every glance felt like a test she refused to fail. Graham raised his voice. Listen up. This is Tessa Monroe. She is here on my authority. She will receive full access to all Nexora Systems files. If anyone has a problem with that, they can speak directly to me. Gasps. Shocked stares. A few analysts exchanged looks of disbelief. Then a woman in an impeccably tailored navy suit stood. Her expression was carved from ice. Graham, she said with respect, this is highly irregular. We've already vetted the Nexora deal. My team and I have signed off on it. Publicly. Tessa didn't need an introduction to know who she was. Lauren Briggs, Director of Risk Management. The one person in this tower capable of bearing red flags without leaving fingerprints. Graham kept his tone even. Lauren, I trust your work, but this is necessary. Lauren's eyes sharpened. Necessary or reckless? Tessa stepped forward before she could stop herself. If the deal is clean, you should be excited to let me look. Lauren turned slowly like someone pivoting toward a sound they were certain would annoy them. And you are Tessa, she said. The person who's about to show Graham why his company is in danger. A ripple of tension spread across the room. Lauren's lips curled, but she made no move to block Tessa as she approached an empty workstation. Graham watched, arms folded, as Tessa sat and placed her fingers on the keyboard. It had been years since she'd touched a high-level financial operating system, but the muscle memory returned instantly. Her hands moved fast, unlocking menus and accessing code structures without hesitation. Lauren smirked. Guest access won't get you far. It took Tessa 28 seconds to override the limitation. The screen filled with encrypted files, internal audits, confidential valuations. Gas sounded behind her. Lauren's smirk cracked. Tessa didn't bother to look up. "Coffee," she said quietly. "Black. And bring me the original printed financial statements from Nexora, every version." For the next 6 hours, the floor pulsed with a different kind of energy. Analysts pretended to work, but instead watched the woman in the cheap uniform tear through their data like she'd built the entire system herself. She traced money flowing through offshore accounts. She compared timestamps and assignments. She pulled satellite images of Nexora's manufacturing facilities in Asia, then cross-referenced them with tax filings that implied full operations. The truth was brutal. The buildings were empty warehouses. Their patents were worthless. Their valuations were fiction, and beneath every lie she found the same signature, the same structure, the same algorithmic choreography she once crafted with her own hands. Nathan Kincaid had used her creation again, only bigger, bolder, and crueler. But one thing was missing: the final encrypted file. The one that would tie everything together so tightly that no one, even Kincaid himself, could escape. She felt a knot tightening in her chest as she stared at the screen. The encryption wasn't just complex, it was personal, biometric. It needed someone inside the company to open it. Lauren returned and stood beside her desk, arms crossed. "Trouble?" she asked. Tessa leaned back, exhausted but sharp. "Not trouble, just a pattern." "And what pattern would that be?" Lauren said. Tessa studied her face for a long moment. Then she looked across the room at Mark Delaney, the CFO, who was pretending not to watch them. "You two have been working very closely on the Nexora deal, haven't you?" Tessa said. Lauren stiffened. "Of course we have. It's our job." "Interesting," Tessa replied softly. "Because while I was searching Nexora's files, I found something I wasn't looking for. Monthly wire transfers, same amount, same date, for the last 6 months." Lauren's confidence faltered just slightly, and Tessa continued, "They all come from a company called Bluecrest Digital LLC. Lauren's throat bobbed. "Funny thing," Tessa said. "The routing number matches your payroll bank." Silence spread like smoke. Her voice dropped. "You're not just analyzing the Nexora deal, Lauren. You're the key to unlocking the file that proves the entire conspiracy." Lauren's face drained of color. "This is absurd. I'm calling security." Tessa didn't blink. "Go ahead. But I already moved every cent from Bluecrest into an SEC-controlled escrow account. If you run, you lose everything. If you stay, you unlock the file. Your choice." Every analyst stared. Mark looked sick. Graham watched like someone witnessing a building catch fire. Lauren's jaw trembled. She walked to her station, pressed her thumb to the biometric scanner, typed a long string of characters. A new folder popped up on Tessa's screen. Project Trojan. She opened it. Her breath caught. It was worse than anything she imagined. False patents, fabricated R&D reports, hidden debt webs, international fraud on a level that could topple markets. It wasn't simply a trap for Graham Caldwell. It was an economic weapon, designed by Nathan Kincaid. Tessa was scrolling through the files when the elevator chimed. The doors slid open. Every drop of warmth drained from her body. Nathan Kincaid stepped out wearing a $1,000 suit and a smile sharp enough to cut glass. "Well," he said softly, "if it isn't my prodigy." Her stomach twisted. 3 years of nightmares, 3 years of regret, 3 years of silence. "Hello, Tessa," he said. "I've missed you." The entire 78th floor seemed to exhale in fear, and Tessa Monroe realized something she hadn't understood until this moment. This wasn't just evidence. This wasn't just revenge. This was war, and Nathan Kincaid had just walked into her battlefield. As Tessa held his gaze, heart pounding but unbroken, "I want to ask you something that ties into her next step. After everything she has already uncovered, do you think Tessa should confront Nathan directly, yes or no?" Or, for a moment, no one on the 78th floor breathed. Nathan Kincaid stood in the doorway, like a shadow that had learned to speak, his smile polished, confident, practiced. But beneath that curated charm, Tessa saw the same ruthlessness that had destroyed her life. The room felt smaller, tighter, as if the walls themselves were pulling back to watch the confrontation unfold. Nathan walked forward with the calm arrogance of a man who believed the world still belonged to him. "I came by for our final review before the signing," he said, lightly glancing at Graham, as if the earlier warnings were nothing more than rumors. Then he turned to Tessa. "But imagine my surprise when I heard you were here. I assumed you were still hiding behind an apron, pouring coffee and disappearing into the wallpaper." Her spine straightened. For the first time since he arrived, she felt something close to clarity. "You should have let me disappear," she said quietly. Nathan laughed. "Tessa, we both know you were never built for that. You were made for brilliance, and brilliance always wants an audience." Graham stepped between them. "Kincaid, this is over." "Oh, Graham," Nathan replied, shaking his head. "You're too smart to be this gullible. She's manipulating you. Her word against 2 senior executives, a dozen auditors, and the largest consulting firm in New York." He flicked his gaze toward Lauren and Mark. "Isn't that right?" Mark, desperate to save himself, nodded quickly. "She's lying, Graham. She has an agenda." Lauren swallowed hard, unable to speak, her eyes darting between the floor and the locked folder on Tessa's screen. Nathan lifted his chin. "See, you've wasted enough time. Fire her, lock down this floor, and let's finish our deal." Tessa could feel the shift. Nathan thought he had regained control. He believed she was cornered the way she had been 3 years ago. He believed she was the same terrified young analyst he had framed. He didn't realize she had come prepared for a war he no longer understood. She reached into her worn leather bag, the same bag she carried every night to the Sutton room, and pulled out a small black external drive. Her voice was steady. "You're right about one thing, Nathan. My word is worthless to you. But this isn't my word." Nathan's smile froze. "This is my backup," she said. "From 2019. Graham stepped closer to see the screen. Nathan remained still, but a ripple of panic trembled through his expression. Tessa plugged in the drive and split her monitor. On the left side appeared the original code from her old job at Glenrock Financial Group. The code Nathan had manipulated. The code he used to steal millions, then frame her. The code he insisted had never existed at all. On the right, the files Lauren had just unlocked. Newer, larger, wrapped in digital armor. But the skeleton was the same. Line for line, function for function, scheme for scheme. She didn't have to say a word. Every analyst in the room saw it. Every thread of fraud, every stolen algorithm, every lie. Nathan's voice cracked. "That's not admissible. That's stolen data." "You stole it from me first," Tessa replied. Graham looked at the 2 side-by-side files. His face hardened. "This is over." Panic broke through Nathan's composure. He lunged not at Graham, but at Tessa. His hand shot out, desperation blinding him. "You ruined everything," he screamed. "You don't get to walk away again." He never reached her. One of Graham's security officers intercepted him, shoving him to the floor with practiced force. The room erupted into motion, analysts backing away, some gasping, others whispering as security pinned Nathan down. Tessa stood frozen, watching the man who had erased her life lying helpless and defeated on the carpet. The world felt strangely quiet. Graham stepped to her side. "You did it," he said softly. "You just saved all of us." Her breath finally released. She didn't feel triumphant. She felt emptied, like someone had poured out the weight she carried for years until nothing remained but exhaustion and truth. The following weeks felt like moving through a storm that finally broke open. Nathan was arrested on charges so extensive the indictment filled 2 thick folders. Lauren and Mark were escorted out of the tower by federal agents. The Nexora deal collapsed instantly, sending shockwaves across the financial press. Reporters swarmed the courthouse. They called it the rise of the forgotten analyst. They called it the waitress who turned the tables. They called it redemption. Tessa hated every headline that tried to define her with a single moment. She wasn't a waitress who got lucky. She wasn't a victim who struck back. She was a woman who refused to stay broken. Nathan Kincaid pled guilty when confronted with the matching code, the shell companies, the offshore accounts, and the testimony of those he once controlled. For a man his age, 40 years in federal prison was a lifetime. When it was over, Tessa walked out of the courthouse into cold Boston air. Camera flashes lit her face, but she kept walking. Her life wasn't behind microphones. It was ahead somewhere she had yet to step. 6 months passed. Caldwell Capital transformed under her leadership. She became head of strategy, and for the first time in years, she worked without fear of someone pulling the ground out from beneath her. She built systems no one could corrupt, not even herself. She designed audits that would catch schemes long before they could grow teeth. She rebuilt trust in a company still reeling from betrayal. Yet the victory didn't feel like a summit. It felt like a clearing in a forest she had wandered for too long. She still double-checked everything. She still kept her bag close. Trauma trained her to expect collapse even in moments of calm. One night, Graham found her standing alone on the private rooftop of Caldwell Tower, gazing at the lights of Boston reflecting across the harbor. He handed her a cup of coffee, not champagne. She smiled at the gesture. "You changed this place," he said quietly. She shook her head. "No, I just stopped it from falling." "And what about you?" he asked. "Are you still falling?" She looked out over the city, her city now, her world, her second chance. "I think," she said slowly, "that I finally stopped running. I think I'm learning to breathe again." They stood there in silence, two people who had survived different wars, but understood the same truth. Power meant nothing without integrity. Knowledge meant nothing without courage. And justice meant nothing unless you fought for it yourself. Tessa Monroe had spent 3 years hiding in the shadows. Now she stood at the top of a tower built on choices she made. She had reclaimed her name, her purpose, and her voice, and she knew one thing with absolute certainty: they would never underestimate her again. Before we close this chapter of her life, I want to ask you something that ties directly to her journey. Do you believe Tessa finally received the justice she deserved, yes or no? If you were watching her story unfold, would you have had the strength to fight back the way she did? Or would you have walked away to protect your heart if this ending moved you in any way? Comment the number 100 so I know you felt her victory, and tell me which country you're watching from. And if this story stayed with you, please share the video so more people can experience Tessa's journey.